Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I am past excited to be speaking with a king. And I don't say that lightly. And I know I have to address my language, but a king in the world of wise ones. Oba Sola Story. Am I saying it right?
Yes, you are actually.
Okay.
You are.
Okay.
And thank you for that description. And certainly, I would say that you recognize me as a king because you are a queen.
I give thanks. Even that first sharing and hearing of your voice brings with it a certain authority. Straight away, you reflect back at me an insight and a wisdom that ones might not ordinarily have. They may say, "Oh, you're so kind. I don't feel like a king. I don't feel like a queen. They would do this thing. But what you just did was, I am and you are."
Absolutely. When you said I am and you are, it immediately made me think of the concept of Ubuntu,
Yes.
which is characterized by that statement.
Yes.
And also that there is a king or a queen, in terms of being a member of a royal family or at the head of a royal family, can be a person that has power over, or it can be a person that has power with. And so in the terms of Ubuntu, we're really talking about power with, where we recognize the royalty, which in my view is about describing the capacity that we have to recognize our true selves and to act from that place. And therefore we're able to manifest, we're able to have impact in this time and in this place. So that's really an aspect of what I mean when I say king or queen. I'm not really talking about I am the king of whatever and therefore these people must obey, etc.
So already we're paradigm shifting, which is really part of what it is I aim to do with these discussions. Who is Oba Sola Story? Where did that title come from? And who is this great one?
Well, that's an interesting question. And it's a powerful question, actually. So partly, there is a group of us, as you're aware, that meets every 3 weeks. And that's an online group. We call it Under the Mango Tree, and it's big people talking. People of African descent talking about life and sharing wisdom, sharing empathy, and being real with each other. And we have taken it upon ourselves to call ourselves, to address ourselves as kings and queens. And Oba is a Yoruba terminology for king. So when I recognized that everybody was calling each other kings and queens, I thought, well, being that we are African ancestry, African heritage, and we are learning more about what that means particularly in the aftermath of the Maafa, where so much has been lost to us. I thought that bringing in Yoruba terminology would be in keeping with the ethos of what we're doing. So therefore I called myself Oba on that basis. You asked, where did I come from? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. What is your journey to this time? Where were you born? Some of us were born more than once. So, you would be familiar with the term rebirth. So bring us into a appreciation of how you come to manifest in your very significant presence.
Well, that's again a story. I was not born with a consciousness of the necessity of the journey I was here to undertake, or even with any idea of the journey I was to undertake. My early years, from 0 to 6, I think were really quite nurturing. And I was a child that really loved everybody. I was very gregarious. My mum often said, be careful. Oh, actually, not my mum said. Neighbors would say to my mum, be careful because your son will go off with anyone, talk to anybody. He doesn't fear strangers. And that was definitely true. I was brought up in Manchester in the 1970s. Well, I was born in the 60s, but I became conscious really of myself as an alive being in the 70s. I don't really remember much before the age of 5. However, after that, when I encountered racism, I was 6 when I encountered racism because my quote unquote friend wanted some sweets from me and I didn't give him what he wanted, so he called me the N-word. And I was really taken aback. I was shocked. I was hurt. And I didn't understand. It really kind of rocked me. Since I, up to that point, thought that I was everybody's friend and everybody was my friend. I was aware that there were racist programs on TV, and I'd heard Jim Davidson and other comedians mocking we people many times. So I knew there was a problem, but I didn't recognize that it applied to me. And that was the moment when I realized that all of that is about me. And so I started to get much more introspective, but not in a good way. Introspective in a self-depreciating way. And feeling that all that was African was negative and all that was European was to be celebrated and sought after. But there was one thing that kept coming back to me, which was, what did Africans do before Europeans? Europeans themselves say that the enslavement period began in the 17th century. And their involvement in it, that's not to speak of the Arabs, but their involvement in it. And then they say that colonialism began shortly after that and was particularly concentrated from the 19th century, 1884 and onwards. So what were we doing before that? And were my ancestors truly how they were represented on Tarzan at that time, as being very ignorant and very afraid of the things that only white people were brave to face? And I just, even though I felt that it must be true because these white people are writing that this is what the case was. But there was something in me that even though I felt weighed down by the burden of my imperfection relative to Europeans, I couldn't accept it. There was something that was like, no, there's got to be a difference. There has to be a difference. And then I remember two things. One thing was, I saw a newspaper article when the book Black Athena was released in the 80s, and it was by a guy called Martin Bernal, and it was something like the Afro-Asiatic origin of ancient Egypt. I didn't see the book, but the newspaper article was raising questions like, could Africans have been responsible for the wonders of ancient Egypt? And at the same time, around that time, Gary Bird released The Crown, the record, The Crown. And that was a record that changed my perception. You know, when he was singing, you wear the crown, I wear the crown, so proud to say that we all wear the crown, get down. So he was talking about all of us being kings and queens, which was the first time I'd ever thought or even heard that concept. Growing up in a place that was I was surrounded by white people as a youth, right up until my late teens, surrounded by white people. And so that gave me a different perspective. And then I met the Jamaican coalition of Manchester when I was about 19. And I went to a college which was really occupied by Jamaicans. And in those days, it's interesting I say Jamaican, because in those days, if you were black and you wanted to be cool in Manchester, you would represent yourself. And I did represent myself as a Jamaican. So I learned patois. I learned how to move like a Jamaican, at least a Jamaican here, how to flex with Jamaicans, which actually gave me a lot of power over my erstwhile white colleagues who didn't know how to deal with me anymore, as I transformed in front of their eyes. And but that had its own challenges, because in those days there was this concept of African boo-boo, and this idea that Africans were exactly as we were depicted in Tarzan, and that Caribbean people had evolved from that, and actually even less honestly or more disingenuously, Africans had nothing to do with Caribbean people. Caribbean people were somehow separate. And so many Caribbean people would say things like, I'm not African. And they would get vexed if somebody mentioned that there was an African connection in their lives. So all of that was going on. And then to cut a long story short, when I went to university, which I did as a mature student, after many years of waffling about and wasting time, I joined the African Society, which was affiliated to the PACM, the Pan-African Congress Movement. And that's when my real learning started in many different ways. I learned African history. And when I first started learning African history, I tell you, Sister Queen, I never stopped reading. I read everything that I could get my hands on. I was like water in a desert. You know, I was drinking this down. You know, Sheikh Anta Diop I can't believe it now, that the first book that I read, I'm a person that really likes novels, but the first book that I devoured was by Sheikh Anta Diop, The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality, which had quite a lot of science in it. But I was just devouring it, Blacks in Science, and that was edited by Ivan Van Sertima, Noka Rashidi, Carter G. Woodson, just all of these amazing people. Incidentally, not women though, at that time. I have to say, on reflect, they were all male. And I devoured all of those things. I devoured them, to the point that the understanding of myself began to change. I started to see myself as seated on the throne of self. I started to, almost like Aset in the Osarian the Osarian metaphor of Aba, Aset, and Heru, incorrectly called Osiris, Isis, and Horus by the Europeans. However, Aset is pictured as sitting on a throne, and she has the throne on her head. And the idea of the throne is implicit in that idea is the idea that we are that the throne is integral to who we are, that we sit on the throne because we have capacity to command and order our reality, not of other people, but our own reality. And it's those kind of things that led me to understanding something about myself. And that's not even to talk about the storytelling, which was another journey.
Wow. So when you went to university as an adult student, what did you go to study?
I went to study cultural studies, but here's the funny thing. I only went to university because I left Manchester and came to London to live with my younger brother. And my younger brother and all his friends were at university. And my sister had graduated. She'd done her undergraduate and was studying a PhD. And there was no way that I felt comfortable in that circle without actually studying myself.
Right.
So, yeah. Excellent. So I went to university. Say again?
I said, excellent, excellent. Basically, you saw your siblings and said that there was something that you had to do with yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that it's often said that university are the best days, that being at university are some of the best days of a person's life. And that was definitely true for me.
Right.
It was also some of the most empowering days of my life, because the African Society, based in the University of East London, was an African-only organization in an institution run by white people. So we kept getting challenged and people turning up all the time. And that gave me the assertiveness to be able to deal with challenges to what I believed in.
Wow. Okay. So in some ways, there was this kind of arriving or a kind of rites of passage. You say, first of all, you would call the N-word. And when people first hear that, the variety in ages is I have found quite interesting, because some people have gone into their teens and never been called it. But you were quite aware very early of the idea of difference.
Yeah.
Like somebody who you consider to be a friend then declares difference because you're not complying with what they want.
Yeah.
Right. Do you see any kind of similarities in terms of what happened to that child that you were And what happened to the adolescent you became and the young adult, and the different stages? Do you see any similarities about that kind of coming into self?
Definitely, it's the African life cycle, and the whole idea of rites of passage. I do see it, because the African education model based on the African life cycle was an intuitive and considered way of understanding that we all go through these things. So therefore, this is the force, the energy that will be extant at these stages. So let's tap that energy rather than ignoring it or pretending that it doesn't exist or trying to act against it, which is what the West does often tries to call our boys gangsters without recognizing that teenage boys are going to have, or many of them are going to have, warrior energy. Naturally, it's not because they are violent. It's because that's a part of what young men go through.
Yes.
And they will go through it whether they are educated to or not. So I definitely went through those kind of things, having battles and feeling bad that the white people around me only started to, I suppose, resist their impulse of insulting me racially because I beat the hell out of them. And that was, because I was not that wasn't me. I wasn't that kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was at the end of primary school, to illustrate that, there was a young boy called Gareth Moores, and he was the son of my favorite teacher, Mrs. Moores. And he used to honk me on the head and call me, give me racist insults. And I just kept trying to avoid him, but he did it daily until one day I spoke to this boy, Christopher Drink, and I said, what should I do? And he said, punch him in the face. And I said, but I can't. He's Mrs. Moore's son, and then she won't like me. He said, if you punch him in the face, he'll stop. The next day, I punched him in the face, but I was so angry that I ended up having to be pulled off him by the dinner ladies and various people because I didn't just punch him once. And they said he actually was the person. He got in trouble. He got in trouble because all of the staff and the other young people said, that's not him. He's not the kind of person that fights anybody.
Right.
He's always friendly. He doesn't. If he had to do that, it must be the other person's fault.
It was a reaction.
It was a reaction, but it's the reaction that I had to revisit a few times during my teenage years, until the end of my teenage years. That changed, and this is where the rites of passage aspect comes in, because I realized that the Oyibo, as we say in Yoruba, the white people of Disbury, which is where I grew up, that they were all fronting what Fela calls shakara. They were always talking about fighting, and they were always ready to do the kind of fighting where it's 10 on 1. But when it came to 1-on-1, there was only 1 or 2 who were really, really up for that. Many of them would say things like, come on then, come on, and shout and yell, but not actually do anything.
I've seen this behavior. Yes.
So I then realized that I think I was about 19 when I had this realization that, you know what? The racist beliefs that these people have actually have made them afraid of me. Because when somebody, by the time I was 19, because I was quite muscly when I was that age as well. So by the time I was that age, the only people that called me racist names were people driving past in cars. And they never stopped. They never stopped to get out. Oh, I'm the police.
Isn't that interesting? They say, don't be no be frightened.
Don't you know for frightened for real? Yeah. Don't you know for frightened? Yeah. Seriously. So, there was an incident. Well, there was a couple of incidents, actually. One when I was 17, but I'll tell you the one when I was 19. Which is, there was a young man running through the village of Disbury. He was called Leslie Christian, and he was another African heritage youth, but from a different area. But I knew of him, and he came up to me. And in Manchester at that time, they called me Raf because my parents named me Rafik as well as Shola, and everybody called me Raf. So he came up to me and said, "Are you Raf? Are you Raf?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" I said, "What? Why?" He said, "Ian Mellows and his boys, they're all chasing me and they're going to beat me up." And I said, "All right then, just wait with me." Then Ian Mellows and his boys, they came running up, and there was 5 of them. And there was me, because Leslie Christian didn't count as far as they were concerned in terms of an opposition to them. So Ian Mellows, who was their spokesperson, he ran up and he said, "Get out of the way, Raf. We're going to beat him up." And I said, "No, I'm not going to get out of the way. If you're going to beat him up, you're going to have to go through me." And then he said, "But there are 5 of us and there's only 1 of you." But what he didn't know was that by talking to me and trying to convince me, he was telling me that he was afraid and that I had already dealt with him. So I said to him, "If there are 5 of you, but you, I am going to batter." That's a term. I am going to batter you. Even if they manage to beat me, you are going to get seriously hurt. And then he said, and he looked back at his friends. They were all looking at the floor and the air and various different places, but they didn't meet his eyes. They didn't really meet my eyes. And then he said, "Right, watch yourself. I'm going to get you." And then he turned round to go. And I said, "But I'm here now. Why are you going to get me later when I'm standing right here? Now, come and do it now." So I was pushing him. But the point of it is that I realized that the conflict that was visited upon me had a mental and even spiritual aspect, not just physical aspects. And I didn't actually need to physically fight in order to defeat these, so that was actually, I think that's the last time I ever even, oh no, there was another time when he was chasing the same boy again. And I gave the same Ian Mellows a roundhouse kick to his stomach that I'm sure he still remembers to this day. So it smashed him against the window and he slid down. But I say these things not to say that I'm a great fighter or anything like that, because I still don't like physical violence. I've never been somebody who is into that. I like to train in martial arts, but not because I want to beat anybody up. I just like the feeling of the kind of strategic movement that we engage. We're sparring and the strength and that kind of thing, but and also the ability to defend myself, the self knowledge that I can defend myself. But I've never been that aggressive person that looks for trouble.
You know, it's interesting actually, because I've never ever seen you as an aggressor, or I've never seen you as having aggression. We, I think, came into each other's awareness because of the discipline of the martial art that I saw you having a relationship with, and the ones that were also in that discipline, which to my mind is one of the things that has certainly supported me having mastery over self. That discipline that martial arts gives you in terms of the breath, but also the calculation, the awareness, the nature of your energy at any given time, so on and so forth. That gives you strength. It builds muscle, not just physically, but it builds other aspects of you and strengthens other aspects of you. And when I first saw you, it was in that kind of arena. So it was apparent to me that you held a certain countenance. You held a certain energy when you appeared. It wasn't a loud energy. It wasn't a boastful energy. It wasn't an antagonistic energy. It was definitely solid. It was a solid, sure, grounded energy, which I consider to be quite phenomenal. It was a silent energy, but definitely a very present energy, one that I have seen you maintain over the years, that has, I think, well, in my estimation and in the estimation of other people I've spoken to, given you a certain position within our culture, whatever our culture means. You hold nuggets of information and you communicate them very skillfully, very steadily, with a precision that is like watching a very experienced surgeon. That's how I experience you. And I've seen your audiences. When you speak, they give you their full attention. When you speak, it is like, and your voice also gives this, it is like an authority being, it's like a profound authority. It's not even just an authority. It is a profound authority that brings to the audience, brings to the present, the past, the future, and the present. So when you speak, you bring in all these other things that makes what you're saying very relevant. It's an incredible gift that you have. It's a science that you have. I say it's a science because I've seen you do it repeatedly with different audiences. And you have a certain humility, which is humongous. The humility with which you do what you do and how you lift others up and how you help people to understand what has happened to us. So can you say something about what has happened to us and why your discipline is the discipline that it is? So you are in this community of griots. You are, if this is a term, like a high griot. What happened to us and why do you do what you do? And how do you do what you do? I know, right? I know, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Deal with that.
So I suppose. Okay, so along with a few of us, I run a monthly African storytelling and spoken word showcase, which is based in Tottenham, the UK. And one of the terms that came to me when I was first visualizing this was that the ancestors will always find a mouthpiece. And that, for me, has been very profound, because the ancestors will always find a mouthpiece, since our ancestry is as old and maybe even older than the earth. We are synonymous with it. We have a line of connection to the beginning of time. And that is written within us through our genetic capacity, through our genes, through the mitochondria of our DNA, and our connection mentally, emotionally, spiritually with the universe around us, with each other, with the animals, with nature, with the universe around us. What has happened to us is that we have been disconnected from the knowledge that this is the truth. We have been disconnected in such a way that we believe that we are those N words that we've been called. We believe that we are gang bangers. We believe that we are prison bait. We believe that we are not able to run our countries properly, that we will cheat on each other, that we are disrespectful to each other, that we are crabs in a barrel, and that we therefore must pull each other down, that the worst person to trust with your money is another person like us. We believe these things, we have imbibed these things, and we can prove that these things are true because we go to schools that reinforce this negative affirmation. I don't even know whether it should be called an affirmation, or it should be called a defamation. So we imbibe these things because we're taught that the first scientists were called things like Newton or Galileo and various different European names. We know about the European Renaissance, but we don't know about the Moors, who were us, that initiated the European Renaissance. We are taught that the first explorers, even though they explored places where we already were Europeans. We are taught that they more or less sculpted, painted, used their artistry and their craft and their scientific ability to create the world as it is today. What we were not taught is that there was a previous model that the Europeans adapted and changed and made that their model for today. And that previous model came from us. So I have learned through trial and error, through talking to historians like Femi Biko, who was the teacher that I think gave Robin Williams, who's our premier historian here, his first lessons into the history of ourselves. I have learned that our history is the history of humanity. I have learned that our religion is the history of religion. I have learned that there is nothing anywhere that has the term origin involved in its discussion that is not related to our people. There is nowhere on this earth where our people were not the first people. And so it becomes really easy knowing that to find many things to say about our people, because our people were everywhere and everywhen.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Everywhere and everywhen. Yes. Yes. That resonates in a certain kind of way, especially as I never heard it in school. I never heard that in school. And I was a good student. I listened. I was very keen to be at school. I liked school. It's a social space, and I like social spaces, and I like to learn. And I never heard that I or the people I come from were everywhere and everywhen. Wow. Okay. Okay. And one of my fundamental themes is school is a very harmful place for us. And we keep sending our children there, which suggests to me that we have some kind of a condition, which I'm not going to go into right now because we don't have the time. But what I do want to do is to, first of all, rebuke everything that they taught us. And as ones among us say, we have to unlearn a lot of what we learned and embedded in our perspective and our manifestation in this world. If only we knew that we were everywhere and everywhen. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. So you speak different languages and you drum. Is there any relationship between those two things?
Interesting. So I speak Yoruba very basically because my parents, although they are both Yoruba, when they came to the UK, they thought that it would actually benefit us, the children, if we learned English and not Yoruba, that it would give us an advantage, which of course was incorrect, but that was the prevailing notion at the time. However, I think that because I read a lot and listened with big ears, I picked up things anyway, and including French, actually. But also, I recently learned the Creole language of Sierra Leone, not to perfection, but I'm definitely getting a lot better with it. And I think that being able to listen to different languages is akin in some ways to the whole concept of rhythm and music. We as a people are definitely the most gifted musicians on this earth. And I think that it is because we resonate with vibration, even the vibration that we don't understand, which is why to some extent, when we embrace a particular mindset, we tend to embrace it more fully than even the people from whom we take the mindset, because we are people of resonance. And I think that vibration is what links music, dance, and language, because they're all vibrationally produced. So language is through the vocal cords and the breath. So it's a wind instrument and a string instrument and a percussion instrument operating in synchrony when we speak languages, especially African languages. Yoruba has a lot of ba and be and different kind of bass percussion in it. And I would say that that's also the truth with Caribbean languages too. So I'm not sure whether that answers your question fully, but that's the link that I see. And definitely the role of the storyteller, which I am, is enhanced through my ability to drum, through my ability to move through the rhythms of the Kazimba and Ngoma, which is the martial arts that I practice, and through my affinity to certain types of music that really make me and many of us dance.
Your response is very full indeed, and you're linking the vocal cords with the idea and the truth that it is an instrument and that we are vibrating and resonating makes complete sense to me as someone who has sat in your audience as you storytell. And the Kazimba Ngoma actually storytells, and it has a language, and it has a stillness, and it has a resonance, and all of those things linked to the drum.
Yes.
It is, to me, there is no separation. It's just different manifestations of the core, of the essence.
Absolutely.
Some time ago, I was captivated by one of your expressions, or one of your sessions of sharing, which you do so incredibly naturally. You have been described as a walking encyclopedia. Like you're channeling without effort. It comes through you. It escapes through your pores. Even in your, how you are active, how you move around, all of this is coming quite naturally through you and from you. And it is resonating with everyone. This particular expression was holding on to the core of the gene. You spoke about the gene in a particular way that struck me in the same way as we were everywhere and everywhen. We are everywhere and everywhen. Can you share something linked to that idea, that expression, that truth of the gene, the very essence of all things? And what happened to us?
Well, we are, even now, if I ask you to imagine that you are standing at the tip of a pyramid in which your mother and your father, your mother is behind you on your right shoulder, behind your right shoulder, your father is behind your left shoulder, but behind your mother is her mother and father on her right shoulder, and her, so your grandparents on your parents' shoulders, and your great grandparents on your grandparents' shoulders, and this goes back ad infinitum. I always, when speaking to young people, say, if there are so many people that make you up, is it wise or foolish to think that none of those people had any form of genius when you're talking about millions of people over hundreds of thousands of years? And they'll often get a thoughtful expression and say, it's actually wisdom to say that some of them must have had genius. And I really like to underline that point, because the truth of the etymology of these words is that they are all related to the passing on of information, the ancestry of us as the beings of knowledge on this earth, that knowledge is within us. And the words that we use, such as generation, genes, genealogy, genetics, genius, they are all coming from the same roots. They all start with GEN. They all relate to ancestry, and they all tell us, if we listen to the truth of it, that we can connect with our genetics through our consciousness. Our consciousness can have an impact on our bodies, which we know from medical science and the idea of placebos at a very basic level. But we also know that we can change our realities through the visions, the strong visions that we hold. And this is because we were hardwired, which is our genetics. We were hardwired to be able to live fully in this time, in this place, whenever that time and place is. So we are here now, and we have come with everything that we need to change the world in our image through the mass. I don't even know how to quantify the creative spark or the creator that is at the back of, front of, inside of, over all of us and in us, that speaks through us and that acts with us. Those things are there for us to really understand and to relate to through our understanding that our genius is genetic. And in fact, the Europeans have come up with this term epigenetic, which is merely a modern day understanding of something that our ancestors understood millennia ago, which is that we can change our genetics through our minds. In a way, our minds and our genetics are so connected that they are the same thing. And so we can decide that I have asthma, but I am a non-asthmatic, and therefore I am going to change this body of mine so that it does not respond to the things that make me experience asthma-like feelings and conditions. I'm going to create this situation around me, so that even though I might not be able to rid myself of sickle cell anemia, I am going to open such a magnetic awareness that the specialists, the medicines, the herbs that can change my experience of sickle cell anemia will come into my life as if by magic. These are all related to what is understood about genetics. It's the reason why the lords and the ladies, as they call themselves, the nobles, which they disingenuously call themselves, it's the reason why they carefully monitor who is allowed to be in their circle genetically, because they feel that they have refined their genetics to achieve certain aspirations that they have set for themselves. We also used to do that. We've just forgotten that we are that we have that capacity, especially when we work together. Especially when we work together. So my recognizing you as a queen is in fact, and I meant to say in effect, which is in effect a way of recognizing myself.
Yes,
as a king.
Absolutely. Which is the fundamental principle that you spoke about in the beginning, Ubuntu. We are, I am because you are, I am because we are because I am.
Absolutely.
There is no separation. You only think there is separation if you buy into a certain paradigm, which has not served us well at all. And, when you speak about those self-proclaimed noble ones who have declared that we are noble savages, you get an idea of the trickery of the language that they use, because we get hung up on certain words and we overlook the other words. Just like the trick that was played when we were told that we would have special education because we had special education needs. We got caught up with our interpretation of their language, and they were not being kind. We were being tricked and have been tricked repeatedly. Just like when there is a declaration that the queen is this, that, and the other, one assumes that they are talking about the UK royal family as if there are no other queens. She is the queen. She is not the queen at all. The word the should not be assigned. But we buy into the language because, well, we've been hoodwinked. I am so thrilled to have had the opportunity to speak with you. And I always learn from you, always learn. In so many ways you teach. I think that you are beyond teacher. I think you are of a high order to be held in high esteem. And for that reason, I know I have to continue to declare that you are Oba and more than Oba, because you don't need a certificate. You don't need anyone else to tell you that. You manifest and act in this kingly way. This is what you do without effort. Long may you prevail, and long may you proclaim our stories our stories. Oba Sola Story. I love that. I love the rhythm of it. And I certainly look forward to what you will continue to teach us and to claim back the words like classical. When people talk about classical music, they're talking about, I don't know what they're talking about, because their classical music is not my classical music. Neither does it resonate with me without me having to work hard. Neither does it make me vibrate, except to kind of almost close me down or to activate certain parts of me. When I listen to our original classical sounds and rhythms, I submit. I have no choice, because what happens is my vibration aligns with that vibration. I don't have to work. And that's what's happening to a lot of us because of your work. People are involuntarily recognizing that they are African, because when you do what you do, they are activated. They respond. This is science. You are a scientist, and I am thrilled to know you. I am so thrilled and humbled to know you. Before we bring this to a close, I don't know if there's anything you want to share. And is there anything that you're going to be doing? I know we have had several conversations about the power of your voice. The power of your voice, which, well, I would love people to make some remark about the power of your voice, because you might think that I'm making it up, but your voice has a authority and a resonance that is quite remarkable. And it was given to you. It is your gift. Is there anything you want to share with us, leave with us?
Well, yeah. One of the things that I'm coming back to you, by the way. But let me begin with saying that one of the things that I feel compelled to do is to teach people how to use their voices more effectively, to tell stories, but also to speak their truths. Because I believe that as the more of us that speak our truths, that learn the truth of who we are, how we are, why we are, those kind of things, when we learn those things and we talk them, we speak them into being, so that more and more of that energy will be spoken into being, and that will have a transformative impact on the world that exists, or certainly how we exist in the world as it is. So that's one of the things that I'm doing now, is putting together a course to do that. Some online offerings and some offerings as well, because everybody can find their true voice. Not many people speak with their true voice, because many of us don't breathe properly when we speak. And the breath and our awareness that can change that.
Okay.
The other thing, of course, is to say that I will be performing storytelling every month at Rebirth of the Griot, which I will send you information on so that you can share. The other thing, and perhaps the most important thing I want to leave you with, is that everything that you said about me, I believe applies to you. I believe it applies to you not as on the same path as me with the storytelling and my particular take of things, but your particular take of things. I have, for the longest time since I first met you, as I believe I said to you, the first time that I saw you, I was in awe of your presence. You didn't even speak. It was the way that you look at people when they're talking and your response to the essence of what they're saying, as opposed to the fluff around what they're saying. You really hear the truth. And I've seen that in operation for so long. And just as you say, that other people speak about my voice and that kind of thing, everybody I know that knows you says a variation of the same thing. That I'm just saying, your integrity, your cleaving to what is truth, and your energy around following what is true is second to none. It really is second to none. And I really have seen that whatever you aim to manifest, that you manifest. So it's a real honor and a privilege for me to be in a space where someone like you says, what do you say about me? It's a real honor and a privilege. So I want you to know that I hold you in the same high esteem that you are talking about when you refer to me. It's very important that you recognize that.
Oh, give thanks. Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. You know, what would it be if everyone knew, if we all knew that we are all worthy? What an amazing place this would be. Like, if it wasn't from the perspective of lack, but from the perspective of abundance, that we actually celebrated everyone's gifts, each other's gifts, and we literally were encountering one another and each other's gifts without this feeling that you can't be your fullness. Wow. And for me, just being able to say I am in a circle that involves you almost signals that what I would have had on my bucket list years ago, which is that I want to be with the people that I want to be like, because there is this saying, show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. And so I get great satisfaction from seeing the reflections of myself and the greatness that is manifesting moment by moment with everyone I keep company with. And yes. I think my takeaway from this is, well, many, but I am holding on to, we are everywhere and everywhen.
Yes, indeed.
Woo! Woo! Yes. I think I have just been fed, watered, and I should just relax and let the food that you've just given me permeate my very being. I am so grateful to you. Give thanks. And
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation, to be fed by the feeding that you say I gave you. When you provide the opportunity, which women do, there is something about the almost the ions, the positive and the negative, the magnetic attraction, the way in which these things work, is that your questions bring the answers through me. So I'm also fed. This is.
Yes. And that is how it should be. And so it is. Hashima.
So it is. Hashima. Hashima.
Here we are again, giving ourselves to ourselves